911, what's your emergency?
Police, search warrant, open the door!
Like I've been there in the hotel room with a needle in my arm, crying, the tears going down on my arm. I can't see where I want to put the needle because the tears are getting in the way. I've been there.
I was literally dying. I was having seizures every day. I had burns across my body all the time. I was going in the ambulance all the time, hospital, getting arrested all the time. I had lost my entire family.
And I was just hopeless. I was just brokeless, everything. Everything that comes with drugs. Especially, I didn't want to die that way.
America is being ruined from the inside by an epidemic. It's been going on for a long time, and now there is fear of worsening as it's permeated every strata of society. It's being recognized for what it is, the beast of the 21st century, addiction in all its forms. Continue to listen as we explore inside and out of this beast with testimonials, insights, advice, and crazy experiences from all of those affected who are now demanding change. Let he who hath no sin cast the first stone. We are not here to judge. We only hope that through sharing and discussion that more will find their way to the road of recovery. And if you are in Southern California or desire to be, the SoCal Road to Recovery Residential Treatment Facility is an excellent first stop on your road to your better life. Hope is real, and if there is hope, there can be recovery.
It all depends on whether the client's ready or not. And sometimes they are and sometimes they aren't. And we've seen them come and go here. And fortunately, we have experienced some really wonderful journeys with some clients, and they're just so grateful that they had the opportunity here to try that journey in recovery one more time.
Welcome to the South California Road to Recovery podcast. I'm your host, JT Turner, and we have a very special guest today. His name is Shannon. Shannon got his start with Enterprise Rent-A-Car, where he was a car washer. He washed cars every day, but because he was such a good worker, he was so industrious and enthusiastic in his work, and along with the fact that Enterprise has a promotion from within the organization policy, he rose to the national office where he went from a car washer to a national executive making over $400,000 a year. He had the wife, he had 2 kids, he had the home, he had everything that we are supposed to want. And then he was introduced to the beast. So let us get his story firsthand. Shannon is joining us by cell phone from Washington, D.C. Welcome, Shannon, to the South California Road to Recovery podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me.
No, we're very, very happy to have you and share your willingness to share your story is very touching to us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Right. So let's get right into this. So give us some context. So tell us what your life was like before you were introduced to the beast of addiction.
Well, I grew up in Washington, D.C., middle class, parents valued education. I grew up in a single-family home for the first 12 years of my life. And the very first time I even tried illegal drugs when I was 8, and it was marijuana, but that really didn't have any effect on me. If anything, I hated marijuana because I saw how my babysitter acted and her boyfriend and things like that. There was in high school, the occasional sneaking of a beer, but again, nothing great. I did very well academically in high school. Attended the University of Virginia, which in the D.C. area was one of the top schools. And again, joined a fraternity my second year at college. There was drinking, occasional pot use, but nothing out of the ordinary. Mm-hmm. It's when I got out of college and went into the working world and eventually started a career at Enterprise Rent-A-Car that alcohol really became a part of the culture. And what I mean by that is, we worked long hours, picking up customers, washing cars, dealing with irate customers, resolving problems, and there was always that Thursday happy hour. Now, culturally, at the happy hour, it was nothing. I mean, it was alcohol was paid for, and it was a thing also too that if you were not at the happy hour, you were somewhat ostracized as not part of the team. Those were special moments that you had a chance to fellowship and really get to know upper management. And the more you attended, the more they got to know you. But also, the alcohol consumption would eventually evolve from beer to hard liquor to eventually trying to drive home at night. So for many years, as I moved up in the company, I continued the culture of my working hard and motivating the team with happy hours. I moved up very quickly in my company, from a branch manager to a city manager to a vice president as a consultant, and it was around 2005. I was married with 2 kids. That when I became a vice president in Philadelphia, I was having some challenges in managing the operation and people. That I got a bad review, and I was very depressed and I was very upset and I was very fearful that if I didn't get things turned around in a timely fashion, that I could be terminated. And at this time, I had been with the company for 13 years. I went to a fraternity brother's house. It was a Super Bowl party. And, it was not uncommon to, have a couple cold beers and maybe, pass on a marijuana joint, which, I would partake. But on this particular night, he had a bag of cocaine. Now, the first thought I thought was, well, one of my heroes, Lynn Bias, who went to University of Maryland and, was drafted by the Boston Celtics, overdosed on it. But it was almost like the perfect storm. I was going through some challenges at work. My wife was at home with 2 newborns, and she really wasn't too happy with the fact I was working so many hours. So I probably did about half of a fingernail of the cocaine, and that started a vicious love affair that lasted for 15 years.
Wow.
And that's how it began. And $100 a month habit quickly became $100 a week, became $100 a day. And for about 5 to 6 years, I was a functional addict.
Wow. So how would you say you got pulled into it?
I think it was a situation where it was the fact that I was very fearful that I wasn't, for the first time in my career, I was not doing well. I was staring at the fact that I had 12 years to get things turned around. I wasn't being a new father. And pretty much, married for 3 years, still, I would say still a newlywed, in a new city. There were a lot of pressures, a lot of stressors. My fraternity brother is someone, we went through a very intense pledge process, and, someone I really trusted. And, as he was commiserating and going through his divorce, I said, well, let me go ahead and join you, not knowing that it would start, again, a love affair that, would really take me under years down the road.
Okay. Makes sense. So what was the craziest thing that you did as a result of your addiction?
Well, it starts off innocently. Like I said, you go inside someone's house, you buy, and of course, well, I'll never do it at work. I'll just do it on the weekends. And of course that changes. I'll never do it at work. And of course that changes.
Wow.
And again, the crazy thing is, as the more cocaine, and this is powder cocaine, I want to distinguish between that and crack, because I did do crack later.
Okay.
But as I went along, and I told you the performance in my region was doing poorly.
Right.
As the more cocaine I did, the more I just focused so much more on getting cocaine that I really relaxed my management style at work to the point where the performance did a 180.
Okay.
And in 2 years, we went from the bottom third in the country in performance to the top third, where now I'm being heralded for jobs that, pay $1 million a year.
Right.
And I'll never forget in 2007 when I won the coveted President's Award, and I got on stage, and I'm the envy of all my friends and family and coworkers. And I remember going tonight crying with the award in my hand, knowing that, I'm a full-blown addict, cocaine addict, and I do not know what to do.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
hid it for years. My wife knew after about year 4, because I had to confess, because I came home one night.
Okay.
and we had a fight, and she was not going to back down. She thought I was, having an adulterous relationship, and I remember pushing her, and the reaction on her face was like, "Well, I'm about to get the police because you definitely crossed the line."
Right.
And I remember going to my coat pocket and showing her that, and here's someone who's never. She might have had maybe 2 drinks all her life, so cocaine was something that just totally blew her mind.
Right.
And I still applaud her for her efforts in trying to get me into rehab the next day. But, she was talking about having me to go to a 4-month rehab, and I just couldn't afford to do that. When you look at all the work that had to be done on my job. So she tried to send me to AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous. There were times I would go just to appease her, but then as soon as I would leave, I would, do lines in the car. I was just in total denial that I had a problem because I was still very successful. I still had money in the bank, and I was able to stay in my job.
So,
but in regards to your question, the craziest thing, and I may be fast forwarding, but my powder cocaine eventually evolved to crack cocaine.
Okay.
And probably the craziest thing that I did was it was nothing for me to put on a suit on and go into a Walmart and go into a liquor aisle, and Walmarts in some states sell alcohol. And I would pick up a cooler, put it in the basket, and go down the liquor aisle and pull all the high-end alcohol bottles into the cooler and walk right out the door.
Without paying?
And
Without
there
paying?
were times I would do that, sometimes 4 times in one day.
And that was without paying?
Without paying, yes.
Wow. Yeah. 4 times the same Walmart or different Walmarts?
I would go to the 24-hour stores, and I feel in my addiction, I'm thinking, well, if I have a suit on, I won't be profiled.
Right.
It was nothing for me to go into a garbage can right before I go into Walmart to grab a receipt.
Okay.
And this was this is how I paid for my drugs, because at this time, I'm definitely on the downward spiral. My credit cards are maxed out.
Right.
I'm in the midst of a divorce, so the money I'm getting or have access to is limited, and my addiction is just raging, and I have to feed it, or it was going to just be a bad thing.
So let me understand here. So basically, so you started off just every now and then at your frat brother's house, and then it became, I'm just going to do it on the weekend, and then it became, I'm going to do it some during the week, but not every day. And then it became, I'm going to do it every day. And then once you got tapped out, then it was more like, okay, I'm going to go to Walmart and I'm going to basically shoplift liquor and then take it down the street where they'll buy the liquor from me. And you then make some money from that in order to go and then buy your next crack hit, because crack was cheaper.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. It was nothing for me to get my company credit card, and let's just say that you need a gas. You had an SUV, and I said, "Hey, how would you like for me to fill up your tank? And can you give me half?" Who would turn that down? So I would fill up your gas tank at $60 on my company credit card, and you give me $30, and
But then,
$9,000 later, I got pulled into the office, and they inquired about it. And, I admitted by this time, I had been through rehab a couple times, but they allowed me to pay it back. My job did everything they could to try to save me.
Okay.
I was a corporate darling. I worked my tail off. I had the respect. I don't know if they had dealt with anything like this to this extreme, but with my divorce, I had just lost the will to fight.
Okay.
I just wanted out, and even got to the point where suicidal thoughts. When you look at the divorce, it wasn't getting better. It was costly. I couldn't see my kids when I wanted. I just felt that I just lost the will to live.
Wow. And
I remember there were times I even mixed the cocaine with heroin, and I remember with heroin you go down and go as they go out, and I remember going out and I said, well, if I wake up, I wake up, and I did, and I would wake up and say, well, God must still want me here.
Wow. So it must have gotten much worse because you had a jail experience. So tell us about that.
I did. Well, as I shared with you, I was my thing now that I'm still working. And I'm to feed my addiction. I'm going to Walmart's to what they call Boost, and en route to Walmart. And mind you, this whole process of parking and walking around the store and getting stuff and taking it it was about a 2-hour process.
Okay.
And I was high on cocaine one night and on the way to Boost to feed my addiction.
Right.
And I went to a gas station to fill up a vehicle that I had stolen.
Wow.
So I'm definitely there was a mentally challenged cashier, and no one's around. I looked, And I just simply came out of my mouth, came and give me everything out of the register.
Wow.
And he hit the button, and in 5 seconds, I had $400.
Right.
So now my mind is like, wait a minute here, this is $400. That took 5 seconds versus 2 hours and maybe getting $80.
Wow.
And now that automatically that became my new way of feeding my addiction. I did it once, I did it twice, and third time I got caught. I was in jail for 21 days. I bonded out with my attorney. My divorce attorney bonded me out.
Mm-hmm.
The judge gave me probation, and I went to rehab for 30 days.
Okay.
When I get out of rehab, I did the exact same thing. Started with alcohol, went to cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
Once the cocaine went out, I did the same thing of going to a convenience store,
Right.
asked for the money, got $100, and eventually got caught.
Wow. Now,
And after the second arrest in 51 days,
Right.
my attorney said, you're going to DLC. Now, mind you, I'm thinking, well, I could just pay my way out of the situation.
what is DLC?
But, in the midst of this second arrest, I jumped out the police car to evade the arrest, and that's an automatic 5-year sentence in the state of Illinois.
Now, what is the DLC? You said you were going to
DOC
go
is
to
Department of Corrections.
Department DOC.
DOC is Department of
Okay.
Corrections.
Okay.
And it was at that second arrest that I was in my jail cell. The police are obviously very mad that I had jumped out the police car and got the state police involved and
Right.
other municipalities coming to look for me.
Right.
And I just remember that I'm just like, I just got out the first time, 30 days prior to.
Right.
People were very supportive, very empathetic. I was getting calls, hey, we're going to get through this. What are people going to say now that I just got arrested for the second time in 51 days?
Right.
And I said, there is no way I am going to ever get out of the situation. And I just remember I'm standing on the toilet in this urine-filled cell. And they put me in the worst one.
Okay.
And I'm weaving the blanket around the low vent because I was ready to kill myself.
Wow.
And this is where the turnaround comes. I just heard a voice that said, 2 years, I'm going to be with you.
Okay.
Now, at first, I'm thinking, well, is this the drugs? But I keep hearing 2 years,
Right.
I'm going to be with you. And what my mind went to was my mother taking me to church. And all these years of gospel choirs and going to church, it hit me. I said, well, I don't know anything about this God thing, but maybe that's what I need to consider.
Okay.
Maybe the God can get me out of this situation. Maybe if I try to pursue this could do it. And I remember getting on my knees and I'm crying and I'm praying. And at that moment, I decided that whatever happens, I'm going to give this God thing, 100%. I wound up going to the county jail and I wound up being there for 9 months. And I remember there were 15 blocks, and this is East St. Louis, and this is one of the most economically depressed cities in America, especially for African Americans. And I remember going to the county jail, and then mind you, this is the second time in 51 days I'm in this in 30 days. I'm sorry, in this same county jail. And they were about to put me in a block with all 18-year-olds, which would have been very interesting.
Yeah.
But at the last minute, the guy said, no, more is going to go to block AB. And block AB was, and I went in, it was bigger. There were older people, and I noticed it was around 9 o'clock that night, and I saw about 10 guys in the jail cell, and they were all had Bibles, and I realized, that they were having a Bible study.
Okay.
And I said, can I join you guys? And they said, absolutely. And that started, from that point on, I went to Bible study every night for 9 months.
Wow.
While I was there. And I started my spiritual journey in receiving Christ as my Savior.
Now, you've written about your experience, and how did you come to write a book, and what did you share in that?
Well, I told you I was in a fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity. A fraternity brother of mine who I was in school with is a motivational speaker, a very successful one. And he has a series of books called Voices of Inspiration, where he gets a collection of 20, 25 authors who share their story of overcoming adversity, and it could be addiction, it could be weight loss, it could be an array of things. And he was fully aware of my story. And while I was incarcerated, I had written a fictional story about my journey. And when he decided to do Volume 3, he said, I definitely want your story. It was nothing for me to go to my the documentation I had to change the name back to mine out of the fictional character, and it went very well. and it was the Amazon bestseller in 2015.
Wow, very, very
Amazon.com bestseller.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah. And from there, it was some speaking engagements from there, and and I was able to forward that to some other Christian publishers who were very interested in an expanded book on my story.
Oh, wow. Very, very good. So how did and has addiction affected your relationships with others? I'm talking about with your family and your friends.
Obviously, living a pretty much life where, I was admired. People were very proud of my accomplishments. I was able to do a lot of things, and I had 2 kids and a wife, and all of that went away very quickly. My mother, bless her heart, she has been steadfast, but as she gets older, and we, I guess we eventually talking about relapse, but, the relapses, I remember she would say that, before I go meet my maker, one prayer that I have is for you to get sober. But I realized that I can't get sober
That's right.
for my mother. I can't get sober for my kids.
That's
I have
right.
to get sober because of me.
That's right.
And I think early on in my battles, I was trying to get sober, for my family. It just doesn't work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's common.
Sobriety is something I have to want more than anything else.
Right.
And it has taken 15 years for me to figure that out. But I can say, with the work I'm putting in, and we'll get to what I'm doing today, but the fact that I have committed my life to doing God's work at the Salvation Army, helping other addicts, it's a thing we say in NA that in order to keep it, you have to give it away. In order for me to keep my sobriety, I have to help the next man.
Okay, let's get more into that. Yeah, how long have you been sober, and how are you maintaining that?
Well, January 12th will make 1 year.
Oh, wow. Well done.
Yeah. I said this is the longest, almost the longest I've been sober. I've been part of the Adult Rehabilitation Center in Hyattsville, Maryland, which serves as the D.C., Maryland, and Virginia area. It's a program. It's a work therapy program where 140 men are housed. I'm a resident manager, so if you think about it from a college standpoint, a resident assistant in a college dorm. And my job is to help uphold the rules and regulations, to conduct urine tests, and to be a support to the men. It's a 6-month program. A third graduate.
Okay.
Many, unfortunately, do graduate, do come back and relapse.
Okay.
But we understand that is a process. But the whole thing is more than getting clean and sober. It's hopefully there could be an overhaul in lifestyle with Christ at the center of their lives.
Okay. Very, very good. I understand that. So I'm sure people that are listening are open to hear what message you have for them. So let's first start for family and friends of those who are battling addiction. What message would you have for them to help them understand their loved one a little more?
I think, with family and friends, they're, to love and support, but sometimes that very, very tough decision has to be made where you have to stop enabling. Sometimes, where I heard God's voice and where my motivation came the most is when I was in a state of brokenness. That no one was willing to extend, give me money anymore or to house me. That's like you have to fend for yourself. You have to fight, and so that's one of the toughest decisions of a family member. But I would encourage members to get involved with Al-Anon, which, family members who are dealing with family members who have addiction, they have a chance to fellowship and share war stories, so to speak. But it gets to a point where sometimes you have to make the tough decision of cutting the cord, and that's okay. Because sometimes I do believe that people have to be rock bottom before the light bulb goes off.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I understand about the enabling part, because when you care about someone, you so desperately want to make it easier for them, but sometimes making it easier isn't actually helping.
Absolutely.
Okay. And so what message would you have? There may be some people listening to this podcast that are considering going to rehab now, or, just sort of thinking about it, or just kind of wondering if anybody's made it out. What message would you have for someone right now that's currently battling the beast?
Well, you have to want it more than anything else. It takes a lot of work in regards to, the Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, been around for decades. And for those who work the program of going to meetings, getting a sponsor, doing the steps on a consistent basis, and acknowledging that I have a problem in my life that's unmanageable, those are the ones that are make it. I can say that for a while, I still wanted to have one toe in the world of being normal, and one toe in the fact that I can still get high.
Right.
But the reaction is that total abstinence is its way. I can't drink. I can't. There's certain music I can't listen to because it will take me back to those days. Certain TV shows. I remember the Wolf of Wall Street. I tried to watch it, but with the drug use, I realized this is not good for me. So, but it is a process. Some people get it the first time. Some people never get it.
Right.
It took me a lot of failures, starts and stops, but every time I failed forward. But there is life, a better life, in which you can be sober. There is a life that you don't have to have alcohol and drugs to get through. And the beautiful thing about the Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous is they give you the tools to deal with life on life's terms.
Wow. That's very, very good. So last question is, how do you looking forward, how do you see the rest of your life?
No, that's a great question. I am a recovering addict, and I will be one for the rest of my life. I have to stay attached to Christ as my higher power. I have to stay attached to the Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous, and I realize that I might be bypassing a lot of financial opportunities to make a lot of money. But it has to, for me, it has to do with doing God's work in some way, shape, or form. And the Salvation Army is a wonderful, wonderful vehicle for me to accomplish that.
Wow. Wow. Well, Shannon, I want to thank you for sharing your story, and you've been very, very informative, and we really appreciate you and your trial and tribulations that you've gone through, and that you are persisting to make it that next day. And I really admire you for doing
I really appreciate it, and may God bless everyone. And again, a great life is there for those who want it.
Excellent. Thank you very much. You've been listening to the SoCal Road to Recovery podcast. Until the next time, it's always time for the Road to Recovery. If you want more information or have an angle you want us to cover, let us know. You can reach us in any way you prefer. Telephone 844-TOP-RECOVERY. That's 844-TOP-RECOVERY. Facebook, South California Road to Recovery. Instagram and Twitter, SC Road 2 Recovery, SC Road to Recovery. On the web, www.socalroadtororecovery.com. I'm JT Turner, your host, and this has been the SoCal Road to Recovery podcast. Someone cares. 844-TOP-RECOVERY. Hope is real, and if there is hope, there can be recovery.